Hey, how's it going everyone? Welcome to CC Media, where it is all about Nintendo. And I don't know about you, but I love video game music. Whether it's a cinematic orchestral explosion or just a few subtle piano notes in the background, music can heighten the experience of a game in such a profound way. It has the power to incite emotion, establish atmosphere, even convey deeper meanings. And to me, there is one video game series that truly excels in the music department. A series that creates such a distinct musical tone for each of its titles, yet through intricacy and subtlety is able to connect them all together. That video game series is, of course, The Legend of Zelda. I cannot count the number of times I've played a Zelda game and said, have I heard that tune before? Or, oh no way, that's the so-and-so theme from a previous game. The level of care and diligence that goes into the music of these games is incredible. Obviously, we all know that the story of each Zelda game forms into this convoluted timeline, but to me, the music of these games is a puzzle of its own. So many themes and tunes are reused throughout the franchise, sometimes ranging from totally obvious to barely even noticeable. Today I'd like to share my favorite moments when Zelda music has been cleverly used to either subconsciously subvert expectations or just give us diehard fans a nostalgic treat. I've compiled a list of what I think are the coolest Zelda music moments. Not necessarily my favorite Zelda tracks, that could be its own other video, but more so the moments that I think are just so cool in how they tie into previous entries. The little musical motifs and the subtle reprises of previous themes, those sorts of things. So with that, thank you so much for tuning into this video, and let's get it started. Also, by the way, there are quite a few spoilers in this video, so I'll be putting up timestamps like the one you see on screen right now, in case you want to skip certain parts. When considering musical themes in the Zelda series, I think a solid starting point is A Link to the Past. This game established many of the tunes that are still used in Zelda titles today, like Kakariko Village, Zelda's Lullaby, Ganon's theme, the list goes on. While many melodies are quite obvious in how they're used today, there are a few tunes I want to explore in particular which have been brought back throughout the series in some really interesting ways. Let's start with the Hyrule Castle theme. Perhaps one of my favorite Zelda tune reprises occurs during the final moments of The Wind Waker. As the King of Hyrule speaks, we hear the Hyrule Castle theme from A Link to the Past play, though it's reprised in the form of a much sadder piano melody. In A Link to the Past, the theme is energetic, whereas here it is sorrowful. The music here emphasizes the impact of what's already an incredible ending to that game, and it gives me chills out of nostalgia every time I experience it. Speaking of Hyrule Castle themes, let's talk about the one from Breath of the Wild. Honestly, this might just be one of the greatest songs I've heard in any Zelda game, period. The melody becomes increasingly complex the further you travel into the castle, layering in subtle themes from Zelda's history. Depending on where you are in the castle grounds, you'll undoubtedly hear 3 recurring motifs, each of which symbolizes one of the 3 Triforce bearers: Zelda's Lullaby, Ganondorf's theme, and of course, the classic Overworld theme. Not only that, but to me the main tune actually reflects the Ballad of the Windfish from Link's Awakening, which is such an interesting idea. I don't know if it was intentional on their behalf, but take a listen and I think you'll kind of be able to hear the similarity that I notice. On the topic of Breath of the Wild, sometimes you will find Cass at a stable, where instead of playing his normal theme, he will actually play the Lon Lon Ranch theme from Ocarina of Time, which, surprisingly, perfectly meshes with the stable theme from Breath of the Wild. Returning back to A Link to the Past, another song that originated in that game is Zelda's Lullaby. This melody has essentially become known as the character's theme, as it occurs in most titles whenever Princess Zelda appears. Though there are a few specific moments from certain titles where the tune plays, but it isn't quite so obvious. An example is Breath of the Wild, where Zelda's Lullaby is incorporated into several of the cutscenes.
Grandmother heard them. The voices from the spirit realm.
as well as in the music that plays while you're riding a horse through Hyrule Field. Now all these things are cool, but to me the most interesting interpretation of Zelda's Lullaby is the Ballad of the Goddess from Skyward Sword, which, believe it or not, is actually just Zelda's Lullaby in reverse. Most people seem to know this one already, but I still can't wrap my head around just how cool that is. And it isn't just thrown in there for no reason either. It makes sense from a story perspective as well, given Zelda's relationship and history in regards to Goddess Hylia. Speaking of Zelda's Lullaby, something that's always kind of interested me is that Mabe Village, or Mabe Village, however you want to say it, from Link's Awakening, sort of sounds like an altered version of Zelda's Lullaby, mixed with some elements of Kakariko Village as well. Perhaps they simply looked at those songs for inspiration, but I think it's possible this was actually intentional. After all, much of Link's Awakening is supposed to represent a slightly altered version of the reality Link is familiar with. Marin and Terran closely resemble Malin and Talon from Ocarina of Time, and the game also includes some funny fourth wall breaking nods to other Nintendo franchises. Switching gears a bit, another thing about Zelda music that really interests me is how much the Wind Waker actually takes from Ocarina of Time. The Wind Waker reprises many of Ocarina's tunes, but subtly, and here are some examples. The Forest Haven is a slowed down version of Kokiri Forest. The Windfall Island is an altered version of the Kakariko Village theme. While they seem like simply hidden nods to Ocarina of Time, I think these musical cues actually help provide a larger narrative for the story. Many people theorize that the Forest Haven from Wind Waker is the same location as Kokiri Forest prior to the kingdom's flooding. Similarly, I've seen theories that suggest Windfall is none other than Kakariko Village from Ocarina. And I think these subtle but important musical cues really help drive those theories home. Oddly enough, when I think about the first two Zelda games from the NES, there are a lot of tunes from those games that actually aren't really reused much in future Zelda titles that I think deserve to be. Although tracks like the Temple theme from Zelda 2 are great, they've only really been brought back to life in, say, Super Smash Bros., not really any mainline Zelda games. This is, of course, ignoring the Overworld theme, which has, in some way or another, been used in every Zelda game. But one really cool Easter egg from the first game is that the theme of the recorder ended up being the exact same notes used in Ocarina of Time's title screen music. And funny enough, this sound effect was actually the exact same sound used for the whistle item in Super Mario Bros. 3 as well. I mentioned a second ago that the classic Overworld music has been used a ton, and for good reason. It's such a catchy tune that perfectly captures that feeling of adventure and wonder. For certain games, the Overworld music consists of this exact tune with some minor touch-ups and changes. But other times, Nintendo has taken elements of the classic Zelda theme and incorporated them into an entirely new melody. Some of my favorite examples of this include the Wind Waker's Great Sea, Ocarina of Time's Hyrule Field, and Link's Awakening's Tal Tal Heights. All of which certainly contain elements of that classic Zelda theme, but change it around and build it into an entirely different tune that's sometimes even catchier than the original. To wrap things up here, I want to share one last recurring musical theme from the Legend of Zelda franchise that makes me go crazy every time I hear it, mostly because of just how small of a melody it really is. Out of everything I've shared today, this might just be the least obvious one. To explore this fully, we have to dive deep into some Zelda lore, though trust me, this stuff is truly fascinating. You might think you know the story of the Hero of Time, and maybe you do, but there's a lot more to it than what's explained on the surface of these games. At the end of Link's adventure in Ocarina of Time, Zelda sends him back in time to live the childhood he never got to experience over those 7 years. Back in his younger body, Link rests the Master Sword on the pedestal, sealing away his adventure, as well as the future timeline he created, so that he can now live his childhood the way it was meant to be lived. At this moment, we hear the game's final epic tune. But this isn't the end of the Hero of Time's story, as in this very moment, Navi flies away. Because Link has now seen the world through an adult's eyes, he is no longer just a child, and so he does not need a fairy. Though treated in the game as a sweet send-off, this decision actually means much more. Without a fairy, Link can't go back to Kokiri Forest where he grew up to live the rest of his childhood. He's trapped in a world where no one knows who he is. The hero who saved Hyrule only exists in the future timeline he already sealed away. But Link is determined to find Navi, the one thing still connecting him to his childhood. Enter Majora's Mask. During these opening moments of the game, we hear this tune. Sound familiar? Both tunes extremely similar. One represents what seems like the end to a grand epic adventure, and the other represents the unfortunate aftermath of that very journey. It's such an interesting concept, and what I love about these two tunes is that they represent the style and tone of their respective games. Ocarina is exciting, adventurous, and cinematic. Majora's Mask is reflective, spooky, and sorrowful. At the end of Majora's Mask, we hear this tune once again as Link, now done with his adventures in Termina, continues searching the forest for Navi, never to find her, and lives long enough to eventually pass down his heroic skills to the hero of Twilight as the hero's shade in Twilight Princess. Oh man, I just got the chills. This stuff is so good. I mean, it's tragic, it's really sad, but it's so good. On top of all that, though admittedly unrelated to the Hero of Time, we can once again hear this theme in the final Champion's Ballad memory of Breath of the Wild.
Zelda, I trust you with the task only a daughter of the royal family can fulfill. And together, protect our kingdom from the threat of Calamity Ganon.
Music is one of the many aspects of Zelda games that make them what they are. I hope this video has given you a better understanding and appreciation for Zelda music and the amount of work and intricacy that goes into it, as I know that reflecting on it has certainly done so for me. This is such a cool and interesting topic to me, and I'm glad I was able to articulate and get my thoughts out there to share them with the world. This video took a lot of hard work and time to make, so if you could do me a huge favor and share it with anyone you think it could be of interest to. So with that, thank you so much for watching this video. Stay tuned to CC Media for more Nintendo-related content just like this, and I will see you all in the next video.